Hi guys, welcome to our sensory differences webinar. So this is about sensory play and we're looking at ages 0 to 5, so those babies and toddlers. Okay, so how this is going to work is it's about a 45-minute recording of myself and my colleague Sue, who's going to just talk through the PowerPoint and demonstrate some ideas that you can use to help encourage our babies and toddlers to explore their senses in more detail. Okay, so the world is very new to a baby. Every day they experience things they have never seen, smelt, heard, touched or tasted before. It is not surprising that it can actually take them a while to react, kind of while their brains are processing all this new information. So as adults, we can help by giving our babies time to respond to these sensory experiences. So it's all about those connections in the brain. So if you think the ages, particularly 0 to 2, is when most of these connections are being formed and they're linking the different cells together through different learning processes. So the more opportunities and more experience we can give them, the stronger these connections are going to be. Therefore, it's really important to try a variety of different activities, situations and stuff to help them explore all those different senses. When it says giving them time to process, so we talk about it in a lot of our groups, but it's that look away process of our babies and toddlers. So if we ever notice they're enjoying a song or a particular toy and then they look away, that is literally them being able to store the information into their memory for future reference. And it's that bit of processing time we need to give them to store all new information. So when thinking about our senses, we obviously have our 5 traditional senses, don't we? We have our touch, our taste, hearing, looking and so forth. Those are our different senses that we experience, the ones that we're fully aware of and the ones that we will go through, as well as the additional ones of different activities and ideas that we can use to help our babies and toddlers understand a bit more about those. Okay, we have got 3 other senses. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of these. So we've got the one is the sense of balance, or it's also known as the vestibular sense. So this is kind of received through our inner ear, and it's all related to movement and balance and our kind of changing of head position. So it tells us, you know we've got that kind of physical knowledge that we're sitting, we're standing, we're jumping, we're running. We don't need to tell ourselves we're doing these things. It's like an automatic knowledge that that's what we're doing, and that is all done through the sense of balance. If you ever remember as a child spinning yourself round and round in a circle and then trying to walk in a straight line, and if you remember you couldn't, you kept wobbling and so forth, that is because what you've done is you've impaired this sense, you've spun it round and you've confused this sense of balance by doing that. So that's that aspect. The next sense to think about as well is body awareness. It's also known as the proprioceptive sense. So it's all about the knowledge of our muscles and our joints and where our body parts are. So just a bit of an activity really now is if you guys just close your eyes and raise your hand. You know that your hand is in the air. You don't need to physically see it, touch it, taste it, smell it. You know it's in the air. You know where it is. And if you start moving it, you'll know it's moving. And that's this proprioceptive sense. So that's how you're doing it. You're sensing that your muscles are there, or that's what it's doing. The final sense as well is the sense of your internal organs. It's also known as the interoceptive sense. So it's the knowledge of your body temperature. We know if we're hot, we're cold, if we're thirsty, hungry, our heart rate's changing. We know that without having to physically tell ourselves that. We know these are going on, and it's that interoceptive sense that's giving us that cue. So those are the different kind of senses. We talk a lot more about those, particularly in more detail on our webinar, Understanding Our Senses. So if you wanted more information about those different senses, please let us know and we can give you a link to that webinar as well. So I'm going to pass you to Sue now.
Hi there. Hi everybody. So we're carrying on now. We've looked at understanding our senses, and now we're going to think about why is sensory play so important for babies and toddlers. We've already covered this a little bit in the first quote that Gemma read out to you about early sensory experiences. We know that these early experiences give babies and toddlers opportunity to make sense of their world, and every day they're seeing something, touching things, hearing things, tasting new things, as well as familiar things, just by things like touching water in the basin, hearing a phone ring, smelling a cake in the oven, tasting seawater at the seaside. They're doing this all of the time, and adults do it too. We use our senses and our previous experiences to work things out. If we saw, for example, some white sugar in a bowl and we could only touch it, we'd know that it felt a little bit gritty and dry. So it might be sand or salt or sugar. But by using our extra sense of looking, we could see that the colour was white. So we could figure out that it may be salt or sugar. But we'd still need to taste it. So we'd be using 3 senses, and we'd still be using all 3 of those to work it out, even as grown-ups. And as we said earlier, it's really important that they have these experiences, children, and especially for children's brain, to strengthen and stimulate all those connections, all those neurons in their brains, and make those neural pathways so that they learn and remember things and use that knowledge for the future. Okay, next we're looking at how can you help your child. This is part 2. It's looking at how you as a parent can provide these opportunities to stimulate your child's senses, and just helping them then to explore and learn as much as they can about the world. So to help your children learn and play and develop as much as possible will make a massive difference to them and to their futures. They'll learn about sensory language. That's one of the reasons it's important. You don't know what something like, say, jelly, if you say describe it as slimy or slippery, it's really hard to know what the slimy or slippery word is until you've actually felt it, tasted it, looked at it. So that will help you with their vocab. It also helps them understand concepts like what is hot water, what is cold water, what is a rough stone or a smooth stone. Unless you've touched it, you won't know that either. It's all really important that they have these experiences to do that. It also helps with early maths. If you ever want to guess a weight of something, doing that without holding it and feeling it is really difficult. And the same applies to size of things, seeing the size and heights of each other. All of those concepts are very valuable for future learning. Science as well, that similarly links in, like how water melts to ice and then it can reverse back again by putting it in the freezer. And then there's lots of those physical skills as well, like the what we call fine motor, the little hand skills that you learn by handling objects, handling tools like knives and forks or scissors, and gross motor as well, how to throw things, hand-eye coordination, all needs to use those senses to tell the brain how you do it and remember how to do it. And finally, it just helps in all of this problem solving, all of your reasoning skills, everything that's connected with learning and working things out in our world. So, finally, just before we move on to the next slide, I put that little reminder that even though you're providing these opportunities, always be aware that objects need to be safe and you need to have tested them out and thrown away any that aren't before you allow your child to use them. We need to repeat that message throughout all these discussions about activities you can offer. Right, we'll move on now to Gemma. Next little slide.
Okay, so it's just thinking, obviously, as we kind of receive and process information, it's quite common for ourselves as well as our children to become quite overwhelmed. So if they can get quite oversensitive if there's a lot of information they're having to process. So don't be disheartened or unnerved if they do become oversensitive and they try to avoid certain senses. As well as that, you might notice that we all have our different favourites. So they may be quite undersensitive, and they might really want to seek out different experiences. You might find that they really enjoy maybe the sensory play where it involves touch and experiencing that, but they then may be less enthusiastic about the smell, which is really common. We all have sensory differences, even from a very young age, and they may experience things differently. I know a lot of people sometimes associate sensory differences to autism, but particularly in the early stages, I wouldn't worry about that. It's all very normal for their development to have those different ideas. And just because there is a sensory difference, maybe they don't like loud noises or they need things, it's good just to take your time and help them process that and encourage them in as much positive praise as possible to try them all out. So just don't get disheartened if it doesn't go to plan. A couple of strategies that we've got here, again, I've mentioned the encouraging them. So really encourage them to play through positive praise and also through offering quite a variety of different methods. So just because one day maybe they didn't like the Play-Doh, you could always try Play-Doh in a different colour with a different smell and try different methods to help them and encourage them to do those different sensory activities. Obviously, a wonderful way is modelling it ourselves. Again, I know I'm very fussy. I don't like having dirty hands and stuff, but the best way is encouraging them to explore by doing it. So modelling it for them, even if we feel uncomfortable with the different activities that we're doing, try our best to kind of overcome that and model it for our children. Get others as well. They learn so much from watching others. So get them to explore with children of their own age, come into groups, activities that they can watch others, particularly if they are avoiding a particular sense, maybe by others doing it in front of them. Children the same age might encourage them to do it as well. Another example is offering different methods as well. So I mean spoons, forks or sticks they can use to explore rather than using their hands if that is an issue. So that's quite a common one for some children. But the main strategy really is no pressure. If they're not keen, move on to something different. Try it when they're a bit older. Try it at a different time. It's a bit like when we talk about foods. It takes 10 to 15 times before they know whether they like or dislike a particular food. It's kind of the same with sensory play. So it takes them a lot of time. They might not be in the right frame of mind. They might be a bit tired, a bit hungry. They might be a bit distracted. There might be something else going on at that time. So again, just don't get yourself disheartened if they're not interested. Just bring it back another time and maybe it might be slightly different then. Okay. So we've just put up here on the PowerPoint, as you can see, are just a few ideas. We're going to talk in more depth about some of these a bit later on. I think Sue's going to talk through some of them. But things like treasure baskets, heuristic play, you know, it doesn't have to be expensive toys to encourage them to play. It could just be sharing a book, or even when nappy changing, just doing some songs and altering our voice. Our face is really the best toy they're ever going to have. So our expressions and enthusiasm is amazing. Finding things inside the house, you know, pots, pans, saucepans, all sorts of different things that they could use, as well as outside play. So we've got leaves, go and explore the trees, the grass and so forth. This website here is an amazing one. We highly recommend it, which has such a variety of different ideas that we can use as part of our sensory play. So please feel free to have a look at this. You'll have the PowerPoint sent to you as well as the video, so you should be able to click on it there and it will be able to show you lots of different ways to incorporate sensory into your day-to-day play. So what we guys want you to do now is just pause the video in a second and think about what other sensory play activities that you do around the house at the moment to help your babies and toddlers discover the world, really. So if you take 5 minutes and just have a quick look, and then when you're ready to carry on, press play again. Right, welcome back. Okay, so these are some of the ideas we've come up with that we would recommend as great sensory play. So things like bubbles, water play, jelly. We've got Play-Doh, gloop, cooked spaghetti, but even raw pasta is a great one to play with. Sand, sawdust, compost, those kind of ideas really as great activities that you can do to explore sensory play with children, probably of the ages 2 to 5. Now, as you can see in the email, there'll be a variety of different handouts with recipes and kind of how-to guides really around things like Play-Doh, our sensory mud, Cloud-Doh and Gloop. Okay, so you can have a look at those and then you can help yourself make some of those at a later date to play with your children. I'm going to pass you on to Sue now, who's going to talk about treasure baskets.
Okay, thanks, Gemma. Yeah, we're going to explore now a little bit more depth how ideas for making your own treasure baskets at home, creating your own. Don't worry too much if you know, you don't sort of take all this on board straight away, because we are sending out a parent handout and you'll be able to read through that at your leisure. And as Gemma said, we'll have the PowerPoint as well to remind ourselves too. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of treasure baskets before, or have any of you used them before. You may have done, or you may be looking for new ideas, or you may know nothing at all about them. So we're taking it from the basic sort of level that you haven't heard of them or used them before. So treasure baskets are fabulous sensory play rather than toys themselves, because they allow children to play with them in whatever way they want to. Quite often we'll just want to feel with their mouths, but then they may want to throw them, hide them, drop them in other containers when they get a little bit older. So it's very open-ended play, and it allows them to really use all of those senses as well at the same time. What we say for treasure basket play is it's usually from an age when babies can sit up on their own unaided, although we do say that parents, if they're still a little bit wobbly stage, you can sit behind them and maybe pop like a little cushion behind them just to help them if they're not used to sitting for too long on their own. So it takes place on the floor. You sit down with them, behind them, maybe if you need to, and then use objects. All objects are natural materials or things that you find in your home. And if you can put them in a low basket, which has a softer rim around it, edge, not too deep a shallow basket, because they quite often will try and sort of grab something and knock the entire basket over. So you don't want anything that's going to bump onto the heads. And they can reach them easier in the small low basket as well. So that makes it so much more fun for them, because they'll get frustrated if they can't get things out of it. So these are just some suggestions now of objects made from natural materials that you can use, that you should be able to find around your home everywhere. So we've got wooden objects, so all different spoons of different sizes. You may have small wooden spoons or large, the ones that you use for cooking, baking with. They're bowls. We've probably got loads of different size bowls in our cupboards, plastic ones, different materials. Just be careful again with the safety aspect of those. Those different tongs you get for cooking, again, you can get different sizes of those and different types. Those little curtain rings you can put on the poles are great as well, just for feeling and rolling and touching. In the bathroom you might have some nail brushes made out of wood and the natural bristles, or shaving brushes. Dad might have one of those, or you may have one too somewhere around the house. So those are sort of just some suggestions for wooden things. You've got the metal things, lots of cutlery, teaspoons. You can have metal bowls, small and large ones. And just little things like tea strainers, or just some very small metal tins that haven't been opened, little food tins, maybe little baked beans or spaghetti hoops or something like that. Those shallow tins. Put those in your basket. You could put leather things in, or fabrics. They love fabrics, different feely fabrics. So you could have a woolen scarf, a little handkerchief, a leather wallet, or a lovely little piece of lace maybe you've used for dressmaking, or you've got left on some material, on some clothing, you could cut some off. And then there's lots of other objects as well around the house. I've done ones actually. I see here it says whole lemon and grapefruit. I've done a sensory one where they could smell and sort of put the fruit in their mouths, but obviously you have to watch them with that and don't let them take bites out of it. And if they do, you get it out of their mouths carefully and quickly as you can. But they do love the smell of things. I've opened little tins that have had hot chocolate in, and you can still smell the hot chocolate. And you can see the child putting that to their face and to their nose, and they can smell it. And also you may find things in your home such as large and flat pebbles, plungers for the sink, or those loofah sponges as well. Natural sponges are great. Anything like that can go in, and it's entirely up to you what you want into that treasure basket as well. So just a reminder that it has to be safe though. Always have something safe. No small objects, no sharp edges. If in doubt, throw it away or take it out if you think it's going to go, be dangerous for them. Make sure everything's all lovely and clean before you give it to them, and throw away any damaged items. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit if we can. This is heuristic play, slightly different to treasure baskets. I don't know if any of you have heard of heuristic play again, or if you've used any of it before. It tends to be, as it says on the slide, from when children start walking and moving around, what we call mini movers in our PEEP sessions, starting to move about a bit more so that they're taller and they can access more and they can do more physical things. And what we suggest is you need a larger space for this in your room, and you need to provide an assortment of different objects. There's no set list as such, but what we tend to aim for is a mixture of different size containers, everyday things like, I don't know, biscuit tins, saucepans, plastic Tupperware containers of different sizes and shapes, and then put those with a mixture of smaller items. And you can group them in their mixture of smaller items. And it gives an example on the slide of maybe a biscuit tin container and lots of different shells. You may have different types of shells, large ones, smaller ones. That could be your first activity to try. And then underneath there's some other suggestions. Other suggestions for different types of containers you could use, like the kitchen towel tube, a mug tree. Those wooden mug trees are fabulous for hanging things on and doing things with. Obviously we've said biscuit tins or baking tins, any cylinders, those cylinders, plastic ones, and funnels. Cardboard boxes, they love any size of those, they're fabulous. They love to put things in and out of those and throw them back out again. And plastic bottles, make sure you've taken the lid off as well and disposed of that well out of their reach, because they're a little bit too small for them to be messing with and putting in their mouths. And then suggestions for the smaller objects to go with these containers. We've just popped things like corks. They love to post those in things. Shells, which we've already said. Spoons, those very large buttons you can get. Or there's some of those, I don't know if you know what I mean by dolly pegs. Those pegs that are long ones, not the pinchy ones. The long ones that look like little dolls' heads on the end. You can get those still as well. Those are good. Okay, so again, just be careful with the safety aspect with this as well. Even though they're growing older, they do still tend to put a lot in their mouths, even at one. And if they get a little bit bored and fed up with this, one idea is to just change it up a little bit and just get them to help you tidy up and sort the objects, and they'll get lots of learning from that, from feeling and seeing the size of the objects and everything. So don't be, if it's not going too well or as well as you thought, have a go at just tidying or sorting these things as well, and they'll have hours of fun with that. Okay, shall we move on to the next one then? Okay, this is just a very quick list of 5 things you need to just know about all the valuable things and important things from this treasure basket and heuristic play. First of all, there are no toys involved at all, no commercial toys at all. I think we've already said this, and it's all natural materials. You always need a mixture of everyday objects, and that's entirely up to you. And if you vary it a lot, that will be even more interesting for your child. Keep adding things or taking things away. It doesn't need any adult guidance either. The idea is that you sit back with your child and watch what your child is interested in, seeing how they're playing. Do what as Gemma mentioned earlier, see if they look. Quite often they'll pick something up and they'll look at you, look back at you. They're checking in with you just to see if it's okay. Sometimes they may need that reassurance. So yeah, you might just have to nod or smile and say that's okay and let them carry on. But try not to do any talking or showing them how to do it yourself. No modelling with this one. And as we talked about at the beginning, there's so many childhood developmental things they're learning all the time. That science, that maths, that physical stuff, there's all of it all together. So it's really beneficial and a great way to introduce children to sensory play. Okay, and I think if we move on one more, just a few top tips to get the most out of this type of play as well, because it is a little bit different to their toys. Make sure you've sort of took the toys away in a basket somewhere behind the sofa or in another room. So they've just got this sort of wider choice of these objects. Choose a good time when they're not too tired, when you're not too rushed. If they're feeling unwell or something, leave it. Don't try and do it then, or just any other reason you think it's not the best time. And so, as we just said, don't avoid directing your child and telling them what to do. Allow enough time for them to play. Don't do it when you've only got 10 minutes and you've got to go and get the other children from school. That's never going to work for either of you. You'll be too nervous and you won't be able to sit and relax with them. And as we said before, observe your child, watch what they do, and that will help you next time to know what they liked, maybe think of some other things that you could add or change, and introduce all new objects next time as well. I think that's all the top tips I've got. If you say, there will be a handout more about this as well coming out to you by email. If we just move on to the next slide. And I'll hand over to Gemma now.
Okay, so that's really our session for looking at sensory play. I know it's quite a quick one, really just to cover a couple of different ideas. But if you guys wanted more information about play and different ways we can explore and experience play with our babies and toddlers, we have a fantastic program called PEEP, which is Learning Together program. It lasts usually around 10 weeks and each session is an hour. It tends to be done at the centre, and it's all about encouraging play, and we look at different ideas of play and activities each week to engage really with our babies and toddlers. And it's a great way to meet other parents as well in similar situations who also got children of the similar age. Now we run these both at our Brookside Centre in Kidderminster and also our Half Crown Wood Centre in Stourport. And sometimes we have these run all over the Wild Forest area. So please look out. Tends to be on our Facebook site. So if you put Starting Well Wild Forest into our Facebook, you'll be able to join our group, and therefore we put information out on there all the time about new courses that are coming up and that kind of information. The next slide that's going to appear will also have our numbers on, so you're welcome to give us a call if it is something you're interested in getting more information, or please respond to the email if it's something you would like to sign up for. We have these run all the time, so I mean there might be one on at the moment, but there's always a new one starting pretty much every term. As well as this, if you are concerned, because this obviously is a sensory difference one, if you are concerned about autism or anything like that, or want more information, we do have what's called the Incredible Years Autistic Spectrum programme. So this is for ages 2 to 6 who may be on the spectrum, or you're going through that process, or they've just got a language delay. So this is a 14-week course that we run. Again, that usually run every term, so please look out for information about those. But we look at our children's social skills, building relationships with them, a bit about emotional self-regulation and developing empathy. We kind of look at behaviour problems as well, and kind of their language development, and it's all done through play. So the whole play process really is done, looking at all these different aspects and how we can encourage it through play. So again, if this is a course you're interested in, please give us a call or drop us an email and we can get you put on a waiting list for either that one or PEEP. If you do happen to have a child that's older, because this tends to be probably school-aged children up to teens. We have our Understanding Your Child with Special Needs as well. So it's a 10-week course, and we look at the diagnostic process, we look at sensory differences in much more information, kind of how we can help with, again, the emotional regulation and empathy skills, and kind of what the communication differences might be as they're getting older, and kind of ASD as a whole, really, and how we can support our children who are on the spectrum. So again, if that's something you're interested in, then please feel free to email us.